Welcome to our deep dive today. Today we're tackling a topic that frankly affects all of us, aging.
Yeah.
You've given us a a stack of excerpts from a gerontology textbook.
Right.
And it's clear you're really interested in getting beyond just the biology.
Yeah.
You want to understand what it means to age well
Absolutely.
in this crazy 21st century. So we're talking global aging trends, elder care systems, even how our brains change. Are you ready for some serious aha moments?
Absolutely. What's fascinating about this material is how it challenges that whole aging equals decline narrative.
Yeah.
We're going to see how diverse aging experiences really are and how much influence social, economic, and even cultural factors have.
Okay, let's dive right in with a fact that kind of blew my mind.
Okay.
For the first time ever, people aged 65 and older
Wow.
outnumbered children globally. It's like the world flipped a demographic switch.
It's a pretty remarkable shift, and it's only gaining momentum by 2050. Get this. 1 in 6 people worldwide will be over 65. That's a massive increase, particularly in developing countries.
So it's not just that people are living longer.
Right.
The source material mentions declining fertility rates playing a role too. And it's happening against a backdrop of economic growth in many parts of the world. Better nutrition, healthier lifestyles. It's a whole confluence of factors.
Yeah.
But here's the question that popped into my mind.
Okay.
How is the world adapting to this graying trend?
That's the crucial question, especially when it comes to elder care.
Right.
The demands on healthcare, social services, even just family support systems are going to be unlike anything we've seen before.
And that's where this Global Age Watch Index comes in. I have to admit, I'd never heard of it before digging into this material. It ranks countries based on how well their seniors are doing in areas like income security, health, and enabling environments. At the top, you've got countries like Switzerland and Japan. But at the bottom, places like Malawi and Mozambique paint a very different picture.
Yeah, the differences aren't just stark. They're tied to very specific policy choices.
Oh, interesting.
Take Switzerland, their universal healthcare system is a huge factor in their high ranking.
Okay.
It means access to quality care isn't dependent on wealth. Contrast that with, say, the United States, where healthcare is fragmented and often tied to employment. That creates a lot of insecurity for older adults.
So it's not just about having more resources.
Right.
It's about how those resources are distributed and accessed.
Exactly.
The source material specifically called out China and India, both facing this aging boom, but with huge internal disparities.
Yeah.
Quality healthcare is often concentrated in urban areas, leaving rural seniors at a disadvantage.
And that raises a whole set of questions about equity and access. Aging well can't just be a privilege for the wealthy or those in certain locations.
Okay, so we've been talking about chronological age.
Yeah.
You know, the number on your birthday cake.
Right.
But the source material introduces this idea of functional age, how well someone actually functions compared to others of the same age.
It's such a critical distinction. Imagine 2 70-year-olds. One runs marathons, the other struggles with daily tasks due to health issues.
Yeah.
This difference in their abilities to function in daily life is what we refer to as functional age.
So it's not just about how many years you've racked up, but how you're actually living those years.
Exactly.
And the text dives into primary aging, which is purely biological, versus secondary aging, which is all about lifestyle and environment.
And this leads us to another intriguing concept, longevity.
Okay.
The source material actually has a graph showing life expectancy changes from ancient times to now, and it's wild to see how dramatically it's increased.
I stared at that graph for a while.
Yeah.
We were living way longer than our ancestors.
Yeah.
And here's another tidbit. Did you know that women generally outlive men?
It's true, and there's ongoing research trying to pinpoint all the reasons. It's likely a mix of biological factors, hormones, maybe even genetics, but also social and behavioral elements. Women tend to engage in more health-promoting behaviors, and they're more likely to seek medical care early on.
Okay, so we're living longer, but the source material throws in this term morbidity compression. It sounds a bit ominous. What's that all about?
Essentially, it suggests that we're compressing the period of ill health towards the very end of life.
Okay.
We're living longer, healthier lives. But then the decline, when it happens, is often more rapid.
So it's like we're delaying the onset of age-related diseases, but then experiencing a faster decline when they do hit. It makes me wonder, could we actually hack the aging code
Yeah.
and extend the lifespan even further.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The text talks about research into calorie restriction and intermittent fasting both have shown potential for extending lifespan in animals.
Right.
Whether those findings translate to humans is still being explored.
It's fascinating to consider. But let's get to the part that probably worries people the most.
Okay.
What happens to our brains as we age?
Right.
Everyone jokes about senior moments.
Right. And there are definitely some misconceptions out there. While some age-related decline is normal, the brain is far more adaptable than we once thought.
So it's not all downhill after a certain age.
Definitely not one of the most exciting findings is that older brains can actually grow new nerve cells.
Wow.
This challenges the old idea that aging is purely a process of loss. The brain retains this amazing plasticity throughout life.
Okay, that's reassuring.
Mm.
But what about those classic intelligence tests that show cognitive decline with age? How does that fit in?
It's more nuanced than just a straight decline. The source material talks about a classic pattern.
Okay.
Verbal abilities tend to hold up well, while processing speed often slows down.
So different parts of the brain age differently.
Exactly. And what's remarkable is that the brain compensates for these changes.
Oh, interesting.
It starts using different neural pathways, drawing on a lifetime of knowledge and experience, like developing brain workarounds.
So even if we're not as quick as we were in our 20s, our brains are finding clever ways to adapt. That's actually pretty cool. The text even mentioned the brain becoming more active in certain areas as we age.
Right. There's evidence of increased activity in the prefrontal cortex, which is involved in complex thought processes.
Oh,
It suggests that older adults may rely more on their vast store of knowledge and experience to bolster their cognitive abilities.
yeah.
It's not just about what's lost, but also about what's gained through the aging process.
It flips the script a bit, doesn't it? We're not just becoming forgetful. We're becoming more reliant on our accumulated wisdom. I like that trade-off. But beyond the biology, I'm curious about the role of personality. How does that influence well-being in later life?
This is where it gets really interesting for me. The source material dives into the link between personality traits and aging, and there are some surprising findings. Did you know that, generally speaking, older adults report higher levels of happiness?
Really? I wouldn't have guessed that. Why would that be?
There are a few theories. One is that older adults have become masters of emotion regulation. They've learned to navigate life's ups and downs more effectively.
Interesting.
Another idea is the positivity effect. As we age, we tend to focus on and remember positive experiences more than negative ones. It's like we're editing our own life stories to highlight the good stuff.
So it's not just about aging itself, but about how we approach and experience it. Our mindset matters.
Absolutely. The text also points out that certain personality traits, like conscientiousness, being organized, disciplined, responsible, have a positive impact on both mental and physical health in later life.
It makes sense those traits probably lead to healthier lifestyle choices, which would benefit anyone, but especially as we age.
Exactly. And on the flip side, traits like neuroticism, being prone to anxiety and negativity, are linked to poorer health outcomes.
It seems like personality plays a bigger role than we might realize in shaping our aging journey. But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to talk about successful aging.
Okay.
What does it actually mean to age well? Is there a right way to do it?
That's a great question, and one that's evolved over time. The traditional view was all about avoiding disease, staying physically and mentally sharp, and staying active.
So kind of a super senior ideal.
Right. But more recently, there's been a shift towards a broader view. Successful aging now encompasses things like subjective well-being, finding meaning and purpose, and adapting to the changes that inevitably come with aging.
So it's less about defying aging, and more about embracing it on your own terms.
Exactly. And that brings us to a fascinating model for successful aging called selective optimization with compensation.
Okay, that sounds intriguing. Break it down for me.
Well, it's based on the idea that as we age, we naturally face limitations, but instead of seeing these as pure decline, this model suggests we can thrive by strategically choosing what to focus on, optimizing our remaining strengths, and finding ways to compensate for losses.
So it's like acknowledging that things change, but still having agency in how you adapt.
Precisely. For example, an older adult who loves gardening but can't bend as easily might downsize their garden plot, focus on plants that require less maintenance, and maybe use raised beds. They're still gardening, but in a way that works for them.
I love that it's not about giving up, but about finding ways to keep doing the things you love, even as you change.
And that adaptability, that resilience is key to navigating the challenges and opportunities of later life.
Yeah.
It's about finding purpose and meaning, even amidst change.
We've covered a lot in this first part: global trends, elder care, the amazing adaptability of the brain, the power of personality. But we're just getting started.
We are.
In the next part of our deep dive, we're going to really dig into the social side of aging, how relationships evolve, the challenges of caregiving, and dazings, the choices people make about living arrangements. It gets really interesting, so make sure you come back for part 2.
I'll be here. Welcome back to our deep dive into aging. In this part, we're shifting gears to focus on the social side of things. We're going to explore how relationships evolve and shape our experiences as we get older.
I'm really looking forward to this part. The source material dives into some fascinating territory: long-term marriages, the impact of widowhood, even the rise of non-traditional relationships in later life. It seems like we often associate aging with loneliness, but maybe that's too simplistic.
It definitely is. While it's true that social circles can shrink as we age, the relationships that remain often become even more important. It's less about quantity and more about the quality of those connections.
The source material mentions social convoy theory. Can you unpack that for us?
It's a really interesting way of looking at relationships. Imagine yourself traveling through life with a convoy of close friends and family members who provide support, companionship, that sense of belonging. As we age, the makeup of that convoy might change. Some folks fall behind, new people join, but the core idea is that these close relationships are essential for our well-being.
So it's like our social circle adapts as we do. It makes me think about those friendships that have been with you through thick and thin, even as other parts of your life have changed.
Exactly. And that ties into another theory called socio-emotional selectivity theory. As we get older, we tend to become more selective in our social interactions. We prioritize relationships that bring us joy, emotional support, and a sense of shared meaning.
Well, that resonates. I can definitely see that happening in my own life. As you get older, maybe you have less patience for drama or surface-level interactions. You want to spend your time with people who really get you.
Right. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It reflects a growing awareness of what truly matters in life. And this shift can be really liberating. It allows you to invest in relationships that truly nourish you.
So we're getting more discerning with our social energy. I like that. Now, the text spends a good deal of time on marriage in later life. It seems like couples who've been together for decades generally report higher satisfaction and fewer conflicts. Is that just because they've ironed out all the kinks over the years?
That's part of it, for sure. But it's also likely that those couples have mastered the art of communication and compromise. They've weathered storms together, built a shared history, and developed a deep understanding of each other's needs.
So it's not just about avoiding disagreements. It's about having the skills to navigate them effectively when they do arise. They've built a strong foundation of mutual support.
Exactly. And research has shown that this kind of marital satisfaction isn't just about feeling good, it's linked to better physical health and longevity. Happy couples tend to live longer, healthier lives.
Wow, so strong relationships are good for both our hearts and our health.
Ugh.
That's amazing. It makes you realize how interconnected our social and physical well-being really are.
Absolutely. And it's not limited to marriage. Strong social ties in general are linked to all sorts of positive outcomes: lower risk of chronic diseases, faster recovery times, even increased lifespan. It's like having a built-in health insurance policy.
It's a reminder that those connections aren't just nice to have. They're essential for thriving. But on a more somber note, we have to talk about widowhood. It's a reality for many older adults, and I imagine it could be incredibly difficult.
It's a profound loss, and sadly more common for women than men. That's mainly due to women's longer lifespan and the tendency for men to marry younger partners.
And the impacts goes way beyond just the emotional grief. It often involves navigating all these life changes: living arrangements, finances, social roles.
It's a huge adjustment. And research shows that widowhood is linked to an increased risk of mortality, especially in the early months after a spouse's death. The stress and loneliness can take a real toll.
That's heartbreaking. But the source material emphasizes the importance of support systems during this time. Having family, friends, even support groups can make a huge difference.
Absolutely. Having people to lean on, to share your grief with, to help with practical matters, that's essential for healing and rebuilding your life. And developing healthy coping mechanisms like finding new hobbies or reconnecting with old friends can be really helpful.
It's a reminder that even when faced with immense loss, resilience is possible. And it reinforces the importance of those social connections. Speaking of which, let's talk about friendships. We tend to focus so much on romantic relationships and family ties, but the text highlights how vital friendships are in later life.
They really are unsung heroes. Friendships offer companionship, shared interests, emotional support, all things that contribute to a higher quality of life. They can provide a sense of belonging and purpose, especially as we navigate the transitions of later life.
I think that's often overlooked.
Yeah,
We might think of friendships as something from our younger years, but they become even more precious as we age.
absolutely. They can be a source of stability, continuity, and joy, especially when other parts of life are changing, retirement, kids, moving away, health challenges. And the source material makes a fascinating point about friendships acting as fictive kin.
Fictive kin, what does that mean?
It means those friends who are so close, they're like family. They provide that sense of kinship and support, especially for people who don't have close family ties or are estranged from relatives. It's like choosing your own family.
I love that. It speaks to the power of these chosen bonds.
Mm.
But realistically, maintaining friendships as we age can be tough. People move, health issues come up, we lose people we care about.
You're right, there are definitely challenges. But the source material also points out that forming new friendships is still possible even in later life. It might require putting yourself out there a bit more, joining clubs, taking classes, volunteering.
So it's not like once you hit a certain age, your social circle is set in stone.
Yeah.
You can still expand your world and make new connections.
And those new connections can bring so much richness and joy. It's never too late to build friendships.
Okay, so we've talked about marriage, widowhood, and the enduring power of friendship. But the source material also mentions some non-traditional relationship styles that are becoming more common later in life, specifically cohabitation and living apart together relationships.
It's really interesting to see how the landscape of relationships is shifting, even among older adults. Cohabitation, unmarried couples living together, is on the rise. It's often a conscious choice, an alternative to marriage rather than a stepping stone to it.
So it's not just about younger folks testing the waters. Older adults might choose to live together for companionship, financial reasons, or simply because they enjoy each other's company without wanting the formality of marriage.
Exactly. And then there are LAT relationships where couples are committed but maintain separate households.
I've heard of that. It seems unconventional, but I can see the appeal. It allows for intimacy and independence at the same time.
It's all about finding that balance. Older adults might choose LAT relationships to preserve their autonomy, to avoid caregiving responsibilities, or simply because it suits their lifestyle. They can have that close connection without merging their lives completely.
It's another example of how there's no longer a one-size-fits-all approach to relationships. People are creating their own definitions of commitment and family.
And it's important to note that both cohabitation and LAT relationships can be just as fulfilling and supportive as traditional marriages. It's all about what works for the individuals involved.
So it's a much more fluid and diverse landscape than it used to be. People are finding happiness and connection in all sorts of ways. But we can't talk about relationships in later life without talking about family. The ties with adult children especially can be so important.
Absolutely. These relationships can be incredibly rewarding, but they also present unique challenges as parents age and roles shift.
The source material mentioned the rise of multi-generational households where grandparents, adult children, and grandchildren all live under one roof. I imagine that could be both wonderful and potentially stressful.
It's definitely a mixed bag. On the one hand, you have that built-in support system, the joy of shared meals and family traditions, the opportunity for grandparents to be actively involved in their grandchildren's lives. But it also requires a lot of communication, flexibility, and a willingness to negotiate boundaries.
It's like a crash course in compromise and finding new ways to relate to each other.
Exactly. And then there's the caregiving aspect. As parents age, they might need more help with daily tasks, managing health conditions, or just getting around. That responsibility often falls on adult children, which can be a heavy lift.
It can be both an act of love and a source of stress, especially if it's not something you've planned for. The source material points out that this burden often falls disproportionately on women due to societal expectations and traditional gender roles.
It's true, women are often expected to be the caregivers, even if they're juggling work, raising their own families, and trying to maintain their own well-being. It's something we need to be mindful of as a society.
Absolutely. We need to recognize the challenges of caregiving and provide better support systems for those who take on this role. But even beyond hands-on care, the text emphasizes the importance of maintaining a strong emotional bond between parents and their adult children.
That connection is so vital. Even if adult children live far away or can't provide day-to-day assistance, staying in touch, offering emotional support, and simply letting their parents know that they're loved and valued can make a huge difference.
So it's not just about practical help. It's about maintaining that sense of family and connection. It's about those phone calls, visits, and shared moments, no matter how small.
And these relationships can be incredibly rewarding for both generations. Parents can find joy and pride in their children's lives, while adult children can benefit from their parents' wisdom, experience, and unconditional love. It's a two-way street, a bond that deepens over time.
And what about those older adults who don't have children? The source material mentions that childlessness doesn't necessarily lead to loneliness or unhappiness in later life.
That's such an important point. While having children is a path many people choose, it's not the only path to a meaningful and fulfilling life. Older adults without children often build strong social networks through friendships, close relationships with siblings or other relatives, and active involvement in their communities.
It's another reminder that there's no single blueprint for a happy life. People create their own families, their own support systems, and their own definitions of what it means to age well.
Exactly. And those diverse experiences enrich all of us. They challenge our assumptions and broaden our understanding of what's possible as we age.
Well, we've explored a lot of different relationships in this part of our deep dive, from the dynamics of marriage and the challenges of widowhood to the enduring value of friendships and the emergence of non-traditional family structures. It's clear that connection is essential throughout life, but especially as we get older. Those bonds provide support, meaning, and a sense of belonging that enriches our lives in countless ways.
Yes.
But we're not done yet. In the final part, we're going to shift gears again to focus on the practical side of aging work, retirement finances, living arrangements, and even end-of-life decisions.
It's going to be a fascinating wrap-up to our deep dive into the complexities of aging. Make sure you join us for part 3.
Welcome back for the final part of our deep dive into aging. We've explored global trends, the amazing resilience of the brain, the power of relationships, and now we're getting into the nitty-gritty, the practical stuff that comes with getting older.
It's a great way to round out our exploration. We're going to be talking about work and retirement, the financial realities of aging, the different living arrangements people choose, and even the tough but important topic of end-of-life decisions.
Okay, buckle up, because this source material covers a lot of ground. Let's start with work and retirement. It's such a major transition for most people, and it seems like that old model of retiring at 65 and living off a pension is fading fast.
It's definitely not your grandparents' retirement anymore. The whole landscape is changing. People are working longer, retiring in stages, even starting entirely new careers after leaving their primary jobs. It's much more fluid and individualized.
The source material highlighted how those rigid norms about when to retire are dissolving. People are making choices based on their own circumstances, their financial situation, what they want out of this next chapter.
Exactly. Some folks might be eager to retire early and travel the world or finally pursue that hobby they've always dreamed of. Others might need or want to keep working, whether it's for financial reasons to stay socially connected or simply because they love what they do.
I'm curious about job performance as we age. There's this stereotype that older workers are less productive. But is there any truth to that?
It's a stereotype that needs to be debunked. The research actually suggests that older workers can be just as productive as their younger colleagues. Sure, they might work at a slightly different pace, but they often compensate with greater accuracy, experience, and a wealth of knowledge. Think about all the skills and insights you accumulate over decades in a field.
It makes you realize that experience is a huge asset. It's not just about being fast, it's about being good at what you do.
Right, and let's not forget the so-called soft skills, things like loyalty, professionalism, a strong work ethic. These are qualities that many employers value highly, and they often come with years of experience.
It seems like there's a real shift in how we view the value of older workers.
Yeah.
The text mentions the Age Discrimination in Employment Act in the U.S., which protects workers over 40 from discrimination.
It's been an important step towards creating a more equitable workplace, but even with legal protections, we know that ageism can still be an issue.
The text didn't shy away from that. It points out that many older workers experience subtle pressures to retire, or they get passed over for promotions, or they face these outdated assumptions about their abilities.
It's a reminder that we need to keep pushing for age-inclusive workplaces. We need to challenge those stereotypes and recognize the incredible value that older workers bring to the table. Diversity of experience is just as important as any other kind of diversity.
It's about creating a culture where everyone feels valued and respected regardless of their age. Okay, so we've talked about the changing nature of work, but let's get real about the financial side of aging retirement. Often means a loss of income, and that can be a major source of stress for people.
Absolutely. The source material talks about the importance of social safety nets like Social Security and Medicare in the U.S. These programs have been essential for reducing poverty among seniors, but they're facing challenges as the population ages and the ratio of workers to retirees shifts.
There's been a lot of talk about the long-term sustainability of these programs. It feels like a ticking time bomb.
It's definitely a complex issue with huge social and economic implications. Finding ways to ensure the financial security of a growing aging population is going to be a major challenge for governments around the world.
It's a problem we can't ignore.
Yeah,
We need to be having these conversations now and exploring innovative solutions.
I agree. And those solutions are likely to involve a combination of individual responsibility and societal support. People need to be proactive about planning for retirement saving and investing wisely. But we also need robust social safety nets and policies that support the financial well-being of older adults.
So it's a shared responsibility. It's about individuals taking control of their own financial futures, but also about creating systems that provide security and dignity for everyone, regardless of their age.
Yeah.
Of course, switching gears a bit, let's talk about living arrangements. The source material presented a whole range of options for where older adults live, from staying in their own homes to assisted living facilities and nursing homes.
It's a spectrum that reflects the diverse needs and preferences of older adults. But one thing that came through loud and clear is the desire to age in place, to stay in one's own home and community for as long as possible.
It makes perfect sense. Home is where your memories are, your routines, your sense of independence.
Exactly. But aging in place often requires some adaptations. Think about home modifications to improve accessibility, things like grab bars in the bathroom or ramps instead of stairs. Then there are support services, meal delivery, transportation assistance, even technology that helps people stay connected and monitor their health.
It's about creating an environment that's both safe and supportive, but that also allows people to maintain their independence. And as we discussed in the previous part, having a strong social support network is crucial for aging in place successfully.
Absolutely. Whether it's family, friends, neighbors, or community organizations, having people to rely on can make a huge difference. It's about creating a web of support that allows people to thrive in their own homes.
So it's not just about the physical space, it's about the social ecosystem too. But what about those situations where aging in place isn't feasible?
There are definitely times when more support is needed. That's where options like assisted living facilities or retirement communities come in. They offer a more structured environment with access to healthcare, social activities, and assistance with daily tasks.
It sounds like a good option for people who need more help but still want to maintain a sense of community and independence.
And then, of course, there are nursing homes, which provide 247 care for those with more significant health or cognitive challenges.
I think there's often a stigma associated with nursing homes, but the text pointed out that there's a growing movement to improve the quality of care and create more home-like environments in these facilities.
It's a really important shift. We need to move away from the institutional model and create spaces where residents feel respected, valued, and connected to their community.
So it's a reminder that even when people need a high level of care, their quality of life still matters, their dignity, their comfort, their sense of purpose. These are things that should never be overlooked.
I completely agree. And as the population ages, we need to keep pushing for improvements in the quality of care and the range of options available to older adults. It's about creating a system that supports people at every stage of their aging journey.
Well, we've covered a lot of practical groundwork, finances, living arrangements, but now we come to the topic that's often the hardest to talk about, death and dying.
It's a natural part of life, but one that our society has become quite uncomfortable with. The text talks about this mortality revolution, how advances in medicine and sanitation have pushed death further into later life, making it less visible and less familiar.
It's like we've pushed death into the shadows, and that makes it even harder to cope with when it does touch our lives.
Exactly. But as we've seen throughout this deep dive, aging is about so much more than just decline and loss. It's also about adaptation, resilience, and finding meaning even in the face of our own mortality.
And it's about having open and honest conversations about death and dying so that we can make informed decisions about our end-of-life care.
I think there's a real need for that. The text touches on some of the difficult choices people face, like whether to pursue palliative care, which focuses on comfort and quality of life, or life-prolonging interventions.
These are deeply personal decisions, and there's no right or wrong answer. It's about understanding your options, clarifying your values, and making choices that align with your wishes.
And having these conversations early on while you're still healthy can make a huge difference. It can alleviate a lot of stress and uncertainty for both individuals and their families.
It's about taking control of your own story, even as you approach the final chapter. Well, I think this brings us to the end of our deep dive into aging. It's been a fascinating journey exploring the biological, social, emotional, and practical aspects of this incredible stage of life.
It's been a pleasure unpacking all of this with you, and I hope our listeners have come away with a deeper understanding of the complexities of aging and a renewed appreciation for the potential for growth, resilience, and well-being that exists throughout the lifespan.
It's been an eye-opening experience for me. I think we've all gained some valuable insights today. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. And as always, you can find links to some of the resources we've discussed in our show notes.
Thanks for listening.